This video was edited by AJ Analysis, a link to his channel will be in the description below. So in this video I'm going to be giving probably the most detailed description of a Regista that I've ever given, looking at the likes of Andrea Pirlo, Sergio Busquets and of course whether Jong could be used as a Regista by Ten Hag at Manchester United. But before I go any further, have you ever gone to watch a video online and it turns out that it's blocked in the country you're in? Well, this used to happen to me all the time, especially with FA Cup matches, as if you're outside the UK you cannot watch BBC iPlayer. However, after I got Surfshark VPN, not only was I able to watch BBC content like live FA Cup matches or match of the day when I wasn't in the UK, but I was also able to get around what is called geo-blocking. See, the Netflix, Disney Plus or whatever streaming platform you use only shows you specific content for the country that you're in. So with Surfshark VPN you can get access to content from America, Canada, the UK, and it doesn't matter where you are. See, it's so simple and convenient to use, I forget I'm even using it. With one click you can set your location to anywhere in the world, and not only are you getting extra content, but Surfshark VPN also protects you from having any of your data stolen or mined, and so it's basically like having a lock on your personal details online, keeping your personal information protected from hackers. And Surfshark VPN has given my viewers a massive deal, 83% off and 3 whole months free when you use code Atlantis at checkout. A link will be left in the description below, and anything you do get from Surfshark will be directly helping to support the channel. So what is a Regista? Well, before we get into the individual roles, let's break it down as simply as possible. So I would say that central midfielders primarily have 4 main tasks: to progress the ball forward, to win the ball back, to create chances and to score goals. Now it's really just a select few of advanced midfielders that are the players who usually score the goals from midfield. Think Kevin De Bruyne or Frank Lampard. More conventional central midfielders or deeper lying midfielders are usually not the ones in the side that are tasked with scoring the goals, and so for midfielders like Frenkie, De Jong, in possession they have to progress the ball forward and create chances, and out of possession they have to win the ball back. Now even creating chances is usually not the responsibility of most central midfielders, or at least the midfielders operating in the double pivot, or really any midfielder in front of the opposition's midfield line. Yes, creating chances is obviously a bonus, but if we are to narrow down what a central midfielder needs to do into the most simple statements, it is to progress the ball forward in possession so that your team can get higher up the pitch to then create and score chances, which can be done through A, long and incisive passes, or B, through carrying the ball forward or drifting past players. And out of possession your job is to win the ball back through A, putting in tackles, or B, making interceptions. Now this is obviously an oversimplification, but as the famous quote goes, football is a simple game. So if you just think about this logically, the best central midfielders in the world help their team move the ball towards goal, and from a defensive point of view the best central midfielders win the ball back, move the ball towards goal and then win the ball back. And so when you melt everything down, those are what central midfielders have to do. A Regista is a midfielder who operates in the deeper central areas, usually between his midfield and defensive lines, and he's his main side's creative outlet in those deeper areas looking to progress the ball forward. Now Registas are usually their side's main creative weapon because of their exceptional incisive and long passing ability, but they also do need to be press resistant as well to enable their side to play out of pressure. And so usually these players may lack certain defensive attributes because it's incredibly hard to find a midfielder who has all of these attributes that you are looking for both in and out of possession. If we look at some examples of Registas, you'll see what I mean. Andrea Pirlo is probably the most famous Regista, being able to keep possession under pressure, find incisive system splitting passes, and switch the play with long passes from deep out to an advanced position on the flank or in behind the opposition's back line. Think of Pirlo and the Regista as football's version of the quarterback. And because Pirlo was so technically gifted, it's no surprise that he started off as an attacking midfielder and was only moved into that deeper lying midfield role by his manager at Brescia, which was Carlo Mazzoni, because Roberto Baggio was occupying the attacking midfield position. And so being a naturally attack-minded midfielder, Pirlo wasn't a complete player defensively. As his career went on, he would improve his reading of the game and positioning, but he still always lacked tackling ability, athleticism and physicality. So in order to get the best out of Pirlo in that Regista role, his managers would have to build a team around him to protect his weaknesses. With Juventus, AC Milan and Italy, he was utilised in a midfield alongside more industrious ball winners. At AC Milan, Pirlo would play as the deepest midfielder in Ancelotti's midfield 3 in his 4-3-2-1 Christmas tree system, with 2 absolute workhorses in Gennaro Gattuso and Clarence Seedorf either side of him. At Juventus, Conte deployed Pirlo in that same Regista role in his 5-3-2 or 5-4-1 one diamond, with two of Vidal, Marchisio and Pogba either side of him, and for Italy in 2012 he had Daniele De Rossi, Montalivo and Marchisio all in front of him in central midfield. This protected Pirlo defensively and enabled him to be Italy's main creator in possession, and this is how De Jong could be deployed by Ten Hag at United. De Jong is a very press resistant player, making him suited to dropping deep in the build up and using his quick first time passes to play out of the press, or being able to swivel and then drive out of the pressure to beat the press on his own. His FB ref report shows how valuable he can be in possession, ranking in the 79th percentile for progressive passes, the 95th for progressive carries and the 87th for expected assists, showing De Jong's ability is not just to progress the ball forward, but he's also able to create when in the final third as well. He ranks in 13th place out of every player in La Liga for total progressive passes and passes into the final third this season, with players like Dani Parejo and Toni Kroos sitting in the top 4 for both of those stats, with Kroos completing the most passes into the final third of any player in the league, showing how good both of those players are, and you could argue that both do play that Regista role for their sides in possession. Kroos is 32 and Parejo is 33, and I do tend to think that Registas and deep lying playmakers in general tend to improve substantially as they move into their late 20s, early 30s, with players like Xabi Alonso, Andrea Pirlo, Xavi, Scholes, Carrick and Thiago all following that trend. Using a Regista is an offensive move for a manager to make, as it does trade some ball winning ability for more ball progression or creativity. This is because a perfectly balanced midfield will consist of a ball winner whose primary job is to obviously win the ball back, a ball progressor whose primary job is to move the ball forward, and a creator whose job it is to create chances. So if we think of this on a scale, with -1 being the most defensive and 1 being the most offensive with 0 in the middle, then a perfectly balanced midfield would be at 0. A midfield with a Regista essentially has a midfield 3 with an extra ball progressor instead of a ball winner, both alongside a creator, which obviously gives the side greater offensive ability in attack, and that's why Ten Hag would use a Regista in his side. As like Pep and Xavi derived from the Cruyffian school of thought, the midfield needs to be as good as possible in possession, and they look to do this with the style also being methodical in possession, which is when instead of looking to counter quickly with direct vertical passes when the ball is won back, they instead look to use horizontal passes to initially retain possession and get into a possession shape, which obviously moves the play forward at a slower pace and giving the attack a slower tempo overall. If Ten Hag was a manager like Klopp, Tuchel, Conte or Mourinho, he may prefer a ball progressor who does so via dribbles or ball carries, as this would allow the side to move forward quickly with one player driving the attack forward. However, because Ten Hag is more like Guardiola, Xavi or Marcelo Bielsa, his side is going to benefit more from having ball progressors who progress the ball through their incisive and long passing, and that's why these type of managers tend to use a Regista over a sole ball winner. If played as a Regista for Manchester United, De Jong in possession would be expected to drop into a deep position on the edge of his own box to aid the build-up, using his press resistance to bypass the opposition's pressure when he receives the ball with his back to goal, either through his first time passes or his ability to swivel and drive past players, or of course both of them. The aim in the build-up is to move the ball into the middle third, so De Jong as a Regista should help United do this. In the middle third, De Jong would be expected to move the ball into the final third, using his incisive passes into players between the lines of the opposition system, or long passes out to the flanks or in behind the back line, and De Jong definitely has the attributes to perform all of these tasks as a Regista. But De Jong is also a very good ball carrier and dribbler, as seen by his FB ref report, which over the past 365 days has him ranking in the 95th percentile for progressive carries and the 66th for dribbles, looking very impressive. But Registas generally tend to hold their positions rather than driving forward with the ball at their feet, because of course without a ball winner in midfield, they are the deepest lying midfielder out of possession, and so tend to sit behind the play when their side do have the ball, acting as a defensive security and being the point of the attack where the ball can be played back to and then recirculated from, using their passing ability. This is why players like Andrea Pirlo, Sergio Busquets, Jorginho and Rodri play as the deepest midfielder in their central midfield, as they can always be behind the ball, allowing them to drift across and open up a passing lane, and because they sit in front of the opposition's midfield line, they should have more passing lanes open to them in order to allow them to get on the ball more often and be the point of the attack. Because of this slight restriction of forward movement, playing Frenkie de Jong as a Regista could suppress the best attribute in his game, which is his ball carrying, and so he may may be most effective when being used as a roaming playmaker, being given the freedom to drive forward in the attack and having another player who can also sit behind him who is more defensive than he is. Defensively, the Regista tends to win the ball back more through their football IQ and reading of the game, which enables them to cut off passing lanes and make interceptions through their positional play rather than through their tackles, as of course often the better at progressing the ball a central midfielder is, the worse he is defensively and physically, not being as good a tackler or being as athletic and strong, and so Registas need to make up for this through their intercepting or cutting of passing lanes. A good way about thinking about the balance for central midfield is by looking at central midfields throughout history. That famous Pep midfield from 2008 to 2012 consisted of 3 ball progressors. Sergio Busquets was used as a Regista, Xavi was used as a deeper line playmaker slightly ahead but still holding a position fairly deep in possession, and Iniesta was used more as the roaming playmaker, who wasn't there primarily to create chances in the final third. Instead he would use both his passing and his legendary dribbling ability to drive the attack forward. Iniesta was more offensive than Xavi because he was given the freedom to drive forward in the attack, and I do think that Frenkie de Jong could play any of these 3 roles, and each one would require something different from his game. And so how exactly would Ten Hag have to build his midfield? Should he want to use de Jong in that Regista role, in the deepest position of the midfield 3, rather than as a deeper line playmaker or a roaming playmaker? Well, if de Jong was used as a pure Regista, which is as a single pivot with 2 players in front, I think Ten Hag would need to partner him with a more athletic, industrious player, someone like Fred to the left, alongside Fernandes with both players ahead of him in a 4-3-3, although ideally United would bring in another central midfielder to start ahead of Fred. A player like Konrad Laimer from RB Leipzig would be perfect for this. Laimer and de Jong could be the ball progressors in midfield, with Laimer capable of using his athleticism and defensive ability to protect some of de Jong's weaknesses, whilst Fernandes is the creator of the midfield 3. De Jong would sit behind Laimer out of possession, with the Austrian being the presser in the midfield, whilst de Jong uses his reading of the game to cut passing lanes in behind. Or we could see Ten Hag use de Jong as a Regista solely in possession with a ball winner sitting behind him. This would work if someone like Ibrahim Sangare was brought in, who out of possession would sit behind de Jong, being the player to break up attacks before they reach the back line. This would enable de Jong to sit ahead, push further forward in the press, and have less defensive responsibility and space to cover in the defensive midfield area. I think this would work best from a defensive point of view, and in possession, Ten Hag could instruct de Jong to drop deep and either create a double pivot with Sangare as Fernandes sits ahead, or become the single pivot and allow Sangare to push further forward. Either way, I do think this could work. I think long term de Jong will be a pure Regista in that deep single pivot, the same role that Rodri plays for Manchester City. But I think for this United side next season, he'd work best playing more like how Thiago plays alongside Fabinho for Liverpool, with United bringing in a top level ball winner to sit behind de Jong and give Ten Hag a perfectly balanced midfield, with Fernandes as the most creative midfielder. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed that video, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, put your thoughts in the comment section, and check out some of the other videos which I have left linked in the description below as well.